This fireside chat is something that I've been just really looking forward to for so long because Liz Elting is just such an extraordinary person. And so, Liz, honestly, if I were to give you the proper introduction you should have, I would take the entire hour with all of the things that you have done. So I'm going to give you a short introduction, and then I want you to take it away from there. Does that sound okay?
Yes, that sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Okay. And like I said, we will have plenty of time for
Hello.
Q&A. So yeah, just know that. Wonderful. It's just terrific. So, okay. All right. So just a quick introduction to the amazing Liz Elting. Liz, as you know, is the founder and CEO of the Elizabeth Elting Foundation and the co-founder of the global translation company TransPerfect, with over 1 billion with a B in revenues. Crane's New York business named TransPerfect one of the largest privately held companies for 12 consecutive years, while Liz was the co-CEO. She is an amazing philanthropist, an extraordinary businesswoman, recognized by so many different groups for her entrepreneurship and her focus on developing women, and particularly women business leaders. And that is certainly right in Take the Lead's wheelhouse. So I'm even more excited to be able to talk to Liz about this. I'm particularly interested, Liz, in having a conversation about how and why you founded your foundation. I was thinking you could have gone and bought an island like some guys have done, or you could have made a spaceship like some guys have done. And I really, really want to know more about why did you do what you've done? What has your trajectory been? What it has been? It's really amazing. And now you are the author of a about to be released book, Dream Big and Win: Translating Passion and Purpose and Creating a $1 billion business. What a fabulous title. And I want to talk about all of those. And before we jump into that, I do want to say thank you for being a sponsor of Take the Lead's Power Up Concert and Conference, and appreciate that partnership more than you even can imagine. So, okay. So, and Christina, if you'll just go ahead and put in the chat so people have that information, just have the website for the concert and conference so I don't have to keep talking about it. How's that? All right. So, Liz, the title to me has 3 parts. And I want to start with the Dream Big and Win part. How did you come up with that title? What does it mean to you? Why don't you share how you and why did you write this book?
Sure. Well, it's so great to be here, everyone. Thank you all for coming today. And Gloria, thank you for that beautiful introduction. I am continually wowed by you. I mean, when I first met you, when I heard you speak, and then when I looked at all the things you've done with your life, and that you keep going, and that you founded and run Take the Lead to accomplish, in order to accomplish your dream. I'm so wowed by you. So thank you for all of this. As far as the name, Dream Big and Win, title was quite a to-do and a lot of thought. I was trying to make it something inspirational, because I think we all need to be inspired. As far as why I wrote the book, just to start with that, when I was in my 20s, when I was first starting my company, I did read every business book I could get my hands on, but I couldn't find something quite like this. I wished I had had something like this, where it was vulnerable and authentic, I'd like to believe, and a little entertaining. So there was a person in there that I could relate to as a reader, and that people can relate to. And then a lot of lessons that I learned along the way from the many mistakes I made, and then some things I did right. So that's why I wrote the book. As far as the name, I think that's really what it's all about. When I started my company, there were a lot of other translation companies out there, and I thought, should I do this? Shouldn't I? And I thought, well, I think I I want to make a difference in the world. And, like all of us, I'm very competitive. I love the idea of winning. And if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go all in and I'm going to dream big. And then I think the idea of doing that and with the potential to win is what keeps us in there and keeps us going and makes it so that we all work really hard and we don't quit. We do this for a sustained period of time. And if we do, we will win. And, will we win that ultimate goal, becoming the biggest in our industry? Maybe. People certainly have done it. Or if not, we're likely to come, damn near close, right? If we shoot for the stars. So I think it's so important to dream big. It keeps it interesting, and then winning, and it's certainly with respect to business, and then whatever else you're trying to achieve with your life, whether it's your mission to make the world a better place, whether it's to, have a great family. So that was why I wrote the book, because I was dreaming big and I was trying to win, and I wanted to inspire others to do so.
So how did you get to be that way? I mean, how did you get to be you? How did you get to be that person that could dream big and have the stick-to-itiveness until you got there?
Yeah. And by the way, I think everybody can be that way. So as far as what happened to me, I, I had some interesting experiences growing up, like we all did. I think one of them, and this is actually a personal one, but I think it just shows that I'm so used to being the underdog and being kind of in a situation where, well, how am I going to achieve anything? But I'm trying to think, okay, if I tell you that very quick story, there I was. Okay. I always loved music. I loved singing. I was in my music class when I was in 6th grade, and I was so excited because we were singing a song. I loved Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And there were 60 of us, sorry, 62 classes, and was having the best time. And then the music teacher started walking around the class, the front row where I was, listening to each person, kind of putting her head up to that person. And then she got to me. And I was so excited because she stopped. She stopped. She said, "This is it." I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to get a solo. I'm going to make it big. She said, "This is the problem. We have one person who's off key, and it's you. So you're going to have to miss music class for the rest of the school year. You'll stay down in your classroom, and the rest of us, the 2 classes, 60 of us, will be in the choir." And I thought, oh my gosh, I am so humiliated. I am such a loser. And I think that made me think, okay, I'm just going to try harder. I'm going to do better. And then I guess, another experience I had, that I'll make this story quick, but when I was 14, I was hit by a car. I was walking across the street in Vermont. I was with my cousin on a lazy summer day, and there we were crossing the street. I literally, probably due to my own error, got hit by that car. I flew in the air, landed on my head, had a fractured skull, and I was unconscious for 3 days. I was in the hospital, unconscious. My parents didn't think I was going to make it. They were just praying, saying, okay, well, hopefully if she comes out of this, it's okay. If she's paralyzed or from the bottom down, if she can't walk, as long as she can talk, as long as she doesn't have severe brain damage. They were trying to kind of make deals with someone up there. Turned out there was another person in the hospital, same age. He had the same injury. He didn't make it. After 3 days, woke up. I had made it. And how lucky was I, right? I was one of the lucky ones. So I ended up realizing kind of at that moment, I got lucky. I'm one of the lucky ones. And then I realized along my trajectory, with having the right background, right, being born into the right zip code, having the right parents who emphasized a work ethic and education and paid for it, that I was a lucky one and one of the lucky ones. And I needed to give back and do something that made a difference. So that was sort of what inspired me to do what, I did.
That's an incredible story. I've got goosebumps from listening to it. And it is one of those, we all have those turning points in our lives where you can go one direction or another, right? And you took a positive direction. And I think that says so much about you and about that next part of your title, which is about passion and purpose. And if I can go back to, actually, I want to ask you a few questions about the business before we get to the philanthropic part of what you're doing now, because I'm really curious. You know, there's so much conversation right now about how pitiful little investment funds women-owned businesses get, and so on and so forth. And yet you always chose to be self-funded. I would love for you to talk a little bit about that decision and how, I mean, it must have been, I know I heard you say, I think maybe when we were first meeting, how you had started this business with $5,000 in your bank account and $5,000 in credit, and that you never went for outside investors. So why did you do that? How did you do that?
Yeah, I love that question. I really love. Okay, so relating specifically to that question, then we can come back to the other part of it. I love that question because back then I was just out of business school. I had recently graduated and I had an experience shortly after graduating that led me to start TransPerfect. But I felt like I had no money, virtually no funds, but I also didn't have time to write a complicated business plan and focus on getting money. I just didn't have time. I needed to focus on sales. I thought that getting the funding could take a very long time. It could be difficult, and it probably was then, and it certainly is now. But one thing I think I realized was even if I got the funding, the company wasn't going to last without sales, without revenue and profit. So instead, I focused all of my energy, all of my effort into sales. Like basically making 300 phone calls a day, sending out 300 letters, and not letting myself up for air, until I accomplished each goal, because I thought my time was much better spent, on generating revenue and profit. And we used to say back then, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. And we said that all through the years at my company. But now, it's almost like raising money, getting certain funding, that first round and evaluation is vanity, and revenue and profit are sanity. And that's really what we need to focus on, and entrepreneurs need to focus on, because you may get that funding, you may get that valuation, but if you don't get the revenue over a sustained period of time, you're going to go out of business, even with that funding, and the profit as well, of course. So I think it's all about revenue and profit. And I think if you can start a company and avoid getting investors, it makes life so much easier. I mean, for all the reasons, that I think we all know. But that was why.
So interesting. That sort of gets to the third part of the title, which is building that billion-dollar business, because not many people get there. And you have talked about how hard you worked to make that happen. I mean, to make 300 phone calls a day is, I mean, and not be deterred by people saying no to you. How do you have that kind of moxie?
Oh, yeah. And I think, salespeople do it all the time, right? I mean, but and I think in a lot of ways it's easier if it's your own business, right? I mean, if you're doing it for someone else, they say if you're not building your own dream, you're building someone else's. So the answer is, yeah, it's hard work, but a lot of people have done it. And I think the people who've been, very successful have just stuck with it. And, what I say is it's all about goals and deadlines and not quitting until it's done. But, as far as the passion into purpose, I was fortunate because I did find a situation, I loved languages. I was fortunate to study 4 languages by the time I graduated from high school, majored in languages in college, lived in 5 countries by the time I moved to New York when I was 21. And I knew I loved the language industry. And then I found a job at another translation company and loved my 3 years there, learned the industry, but thought, I think I have some ideas on how this can be done better. So I just kept that idea in the back of my head, went to school, got my MBA, very briefly tried out finance, which, is another little story, but then realized translations is my passion. And there is room for a company here. And actually, the other thing I'd say about starting a company is I knew I loved languages. I thought there was room because of the beginning of globalization. And also because I felt there was a real gap between what clients needed and what was available in the industry as far as service and quality. But what the other thing I'll say, because I think it can inspire people to start companies, is certainly I wasn't solving a brand new problem. Translation, they say, is like the oldest profession, other than what they say the oldest profession is. But I thought it could be done better. So I think, you don't have to invent something entirely new to be wildly successful. But the other piece of it is, okay, translate. Yeah, basically that I had the opportunity to do. Oh, this is what I was about to say. My apologies. That there were many translation companies out there. There were supposedly 10,000. It was a very mom and pop-ish industry, and I thought there could be, a global provider, a premier company in the industry. And I only say that because as people are thinking of ideas for their companies, I think it's important to remember that.
So you found a particular edge to you saw
Yes.
some, a way of doing what had been done that
Yes.
and you did that. Okay, so I have a feeling that it probably wasn't always rainbows and flowers. What was the most difficult point for you? The hardest, the lowest point in this? Was there a time when you felt like, oh my God, I just can't do it?
Ah, that happened a lot. I mean, because I did this for 26 years, almost 26 years. So it happened so many times. You know, okay. I mean, there were times when we thought, oh my gosh, we're not getting enough sales. And now we've added some people and we should have the revenue support it, but it's just support it, but it was a bad month. And how are we going to make payroll? I mean, that happened a couple of times. We had a situation with a client where it said, okay, and they were a Fortune 100 company. So it looked very promising. And they said, okay, we have $15 million worth of business for you. We thought, wonderful. And we opened an office in Florida for them because that's where they needed it, the work done. It was Spanish for the US, and that's what they needed for their facilities, their stores. And then after we put in the time and the money, we set up offices, we hired people, they pulled the plug on it. And yes, we didn't have the right contract in place. We learned a lot from that lesson, from that experience. But yes, that was a very bad situation because that brought the money in the bank down to almost nothing. And, as we know, that the number one reason companies go out of business is they run out of money. So, I mean, all kinds of experiences. Issues with people. Yeah, I had partnership issues. And certainly at the end, I had major partnership issues. So there were a lot of interesting experiences. But that's part of the journey. It's part of the
Right.
journey, and it was exciting and
Right.
so educational. I mean, another experience was when, and this type of thing happened a few times, but hired a CFO, and it was very hard to hire a CFO. I think that's one of the hardest positions to hire for. And then there he was writing checks to himself and his friends. And, I mean, we had all kinds of situations like that. But, that can be kind of frustrating when you want someone there trying to protect the money and then they are, stealing. But I mean, all kinds of situations.
Definitely, definitely. I think yes, anybody who has run a business, or in my case, a nonprofit, you will have many more situations than you ever imagined you would have had. And then at the point where you realized you wanted to not be in that leadership role in the business, can we touch on that? I mean, I know it's a difficult situation, but it's a big part of the story, I think, and how you handled it with such grace is really, I think, to your credit.
Oh, thank you, Gloria. I really appreciate that. And, one thing I didn't mention is the reason I started the company is, aside from loving languages and thinking there was a place for a global translation company and wanting to build the biggest, I was in a situation right before business school. I mean, sorry, right after business school, right before I started my company, where I got this job in the proprietary trading division of a French bank. And I thought, wonderful, I'll try out finance, I'll make some money, save some money, and I can combine that with my love for international business because it's a French bank. So I got a job doing equity arbitrage. The moment I walked in to that company, I noticed I was the only woman there. This was in 1992 in finance. So not a huge surprise. But whenever the phone rang, all the guys would yell, Liz, phone. And it wasn't just because I was new. There were other new people along with me. It was because, of course, I was the woman. So it got worse as time went on. I said to my boss, okay, I finished all my work. What should I do? Because I was coming in at 7:30 in the morning, leaving at midnight. I mean, I was really trying to prove myself. And he said, well, you can walk around to all the guys and, ask them what supplies they need. And then you can go in the supply closet and see what other supplies are needed. I thought, wow, I'm not going to prove myself here. And I also realized I didn't love finance. But the reason and so that was my aha moment where I decided to start TransPerfect. But the reason I just told you that is I thought, if I'm not in an environment which I love, both because of the culture and the kind of work we're doing, I'm going to create my own. So fast forward to where I was with TransPerfect. I certainly tried to do that for many years, tried to make it so we were an employer of choice in our industry and ideally any industry. Worked to make sure sales and production were on the same team because at my other company I had found they weren't always, but really tried to create this dream culture where people would not want to leave. They were working hard, but they were also playing hard. They really bonded with one another. Okay. So what ended up happening over time is I realized there were issues. I wasn't able to control everything. And I started having real partnership issues where my partner and I, who were 50-50 owners with no shareholders agreement, and that's something I can share with you, that was a mistake. Not having a shareholders agreement and being 50-50 owners with no deciding vote, were having major issues. And I wasn't able to make sure the culture was the way it should be and things were happening as they should. And there were some things going on that, we don't need to talk about, but they were problematic. So I actually brought in attorneys to help me create a shareholders agreement once and for all and tried to get my partner to sign it. We could not agree. So when things started getting very bad with situations going on, I had to litigate. And what I asked for was a custodian to be put in charge to resolve deadlock in the short term and oversee the sale of the company in the longer term, whereby I could buy him out, he could buy me out, or a third party could buy us both out. I just had to do it. This was after 20 years and this was my baby, but you get to a point where if it's not working, you need to change things. And it was a very challenging, 4+ years, lots of litigation. I spent over $50 million in legal fees. But the worst part was it was quite traumatic. I mean, every email, I had ever written and that we had ever written for many, many years was, discovered. And I mean, not that they're that exciting, but there are all kinds of things in emails. And it was difficult between my partner and me and the thousands of employees who were there, a part of it. And I did have people who said things to me like, Liz, it's not worth it. Why are you doing it? Just doing this, just live with things the way they are. Or, your partner's offering you this, just take it. And, I said, no, I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight like a woman, till the end. No, I'm going to, fight it out till the end to do what's right here. And I did till the very end. And it paid off. It paid off sticking with it, not just either agreeing and being in the situation or quitting after a year or 2 or 3. I mean, I stayed with it till the very end and it made a difference both in how I felt and financially I got the best result I could. So given the circumstances, but anyway, so it's all about, I think, sticking with things, even when others tell you, no, this is crazy. Why are you doing this? So anyway, that was what happened.
Love that. I love that. One of the things I always say is that the thing that differentiates the person who is doing okay from the person who is a real success, a big success, and achieves what they want to achieve is caring enough to make it happen. And you clearly care enough make it happen. You have to, that stick-to-itiveness, even in the hardest times, is just it's truly what differentiates, I think, those who do accomplish the kind of amazing things that you have accomplished. So I want to switch now to a question about your current focus on philanthropy, and there are a couple of things before that are that I want to also insert. One of which is that I'm so grateful to you, Liz, for having this conversation with me today, because, as you know, I invited you to be a keynote speaker at our upcoming Women's Equality Day Power Up concert and conference on August 26th. And you're unable to be there in person. So we will be actually sharing some of your key points with the people at the conference. And so I'm really excited to be able to continue that conversation there. And we will also have a panel there called The Entrepreneur's Journey. Among other panels that we're having, we have we have several awards that we give. We have a leading man, leading woman, leading company, and also we're doing a special award to Ms. Magazine on their 50th anniversary, and a special award to Kathleen Turner for what we call Wear the Shirt. In other words, wearing the shirt of your convictions. We give it to somebody every year who stands up for important values, especially around women's rights and helping women. And so we do all of those things, and we have these panels, and I'm pleased that we'll be able to take some of this good advice that you're giving people today, and we'll be able to include some of that, at least in what we do at the conference. Also want to mention that, and I'm going to ask Christina to put this into the chat so that you'll have it so you can look around if you'd like to in the concert and conference website and see the whole program. That the first 250 people who register are going to get a free copy of Liz's book, Dream Big and Win. And also, by using the code that Christina will put in, you'll get a 20% discount on the registration fee, whether it's the in-person registration in Los Angeles or the virtual registration. You can do either one. And if you stay until the end, there will be another little special opportunity for you, so that I'm very excited about. So switching now to, I'm curious as to whether, the last book I wrote is called Intentioning, because I wanted to make intention into a verb. And I'm curious as to whether you were intentioning when you started out that you would ultimately be able to sort of make that pivot in your life to being a philanthropist, and to be able to that you wanted to make the money so that you could have an opportunity to give to causes that you believe in, and to help, particularly to help women and help business women and all these things that you're doing, which I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about. Why did you do that when you could have been doing a rocket ship instead?
Right.
We won't name names, but
yeah. I did always want to do that. And I started getting involved in philanthropy during my days at Transport, but I found there was no time. I mean, like most entrepreneurs, most CEOs, it's enough to spend the time you need to on your company. And then it's almost like whatever other time you have, it's your family, right? Whatever family you have. I think, but I knew that I wanted to be involved in philanthropy. And, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, being an underdog, being one of the lucky ones, I thought, wow, I was, through my good fortune, through hiring amazing people, and then through, some hard work and persistence, I was able to do what I did. But, again, I'm one of the lucky ones. I was around the right people, and so many people aren't. So I wanted to help provide those opportunities to other people. And yes, my foundation, the mission is to help support and empower women and people from marginalized communities. And I saw issues with women and how they were treated during my, over 25 years at my company, and in all kinds of situations, and with people from marginalized communities. And so that's why I do what I do with my foundation. And, we do a number of things. We finance education. We finance or fund entrepreneurs, do them in a number of ways, which, I could get into, but also, the hungry, people from, who can't afford to feed themselves. We work on gun safety, because that tends to be an issue more for women in marginalized communities as well. And also what issue is more important than gun safety? Um, and that's really why, I do what I do and, or what we're working on. But yes, it's because it's something I've always wanted to do. And I think it's one thing to make a certain amount of money, but after that, it's like, what do you do with it? How are you making the world a better place? Because the world is not fair, and I really truly believe in equality for all. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Very, very wonderful, Liz. It seems like maybe this would be a good time to stop and see if there are questions that people would like to ask you. I mean, I have a whole more list longer of questions that I want to ask, but I've been monopolizing this time, and I'd love to give other people a chance to ask questions if you have questions. And I'm going to see if I can if I see any questions here
There's a
in the
question
chat.
in the chat from Lewis Phillips.
Okay. All right. How important is it for a woman to be able to pitch effectively to investors? And what communication skills and presence, quote, presence, are essential to success? Do women, there's a lot of questions actually that Lois has. Do women have to consider the double standard when they present themselves, gaining the confidence in order to get, I guess, in order to gain the confidence of investors as a woman when asking for big money? What a great question. What do you say to that, Liz?
Okay, wait. So
I'm going to say, okay, if I can pare that down, I
yeah.
think that there are a couple of questions. One is one is about how do you pitch effectively, and particularly, are there differences for women in how we need to present ourselves in order to be effective pitching our business or pitching for an investor?
Okay, sure. And Gloria, if you have anything to say on that, please jump in, because I'll just, as far as the issue, as far as the question, I think we as women, how we need to do it differently than a man would. I just want to make sure I understand. I think the way I always took the attitude in business that, yes, I happen to be a woman, but it's about results, right? It's about making everything you possibly can related to results. And when I went through my litigation at the end, I actually looked at buying my company with a partner, with Blackstone. I met with a dozen private equity firms and ended up partnering with Blackstone, and we were going to go through the process. And when I was talking about my company and the value of it, again, it always came down to results. And I think that a lot of people will talk about what could be, and I see this all the time when people are looking for, like, if they're asking me if I want to invest, what could be kind of pie in the sky. But I, as an investor, or I, as a person who's trying to get investment money, I'm looking for results. Okay, what revenue do you have so far? What profit do you have so far? And not just what do you forecast over the next 5 or 10 years, but more, the actual numbers you've done. And forecast, if there is a forecast, is based on things you actually know that are going to happen. So, I think all of those things are important. I think it's important for women to go in there with confidence, because men certainly do. But I think, other than that, it's just, believing in what you're doing and showing the numbers and the results to get you what you need.
Mm. Yeah, and I think behind that question is something that many of us have experienced over time, which is sort of like related to your story that you told earlier of the expectation that you would figure out what supplies the men needed, or you would answer them. I think both men and women are in these stereotypes. We are both given culturally determined, culturally ingrained, I guess, stereotypes. They're not hardwired. They are culturally defined. And when you break your stereotypical role, you often are not treated well, and you may be judged more harshly. And I think there's a lot of research to back that up. But your principle, your basic principle of stick to the facts, stick to the results, stick to what your case is a good lesson for women. And now you said come in with confidence. Do you have particular ways of coming in with confidence? Were you ever troubled with, say, imposter syndrome, which I get asked about a lot? What enabled you to have that confidence?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I say what I should have. I mean, I think I have imposter syndrome all the time, every day. Yeah, I mean, so yes. But I think we just have to believe in what we're presenting, whether it's, whether we're selling something, whether we're trying to get an investment in our company, whether we're trying to teach something and we truly feel it and mean it. I think, as long as we do, I think then the confidence comes. But it's something I have to work on all of the time to make sure I feel it. When we all get nervous, or not we all, I mean, some people actually don't, but for example, public speaking. And I mentioned this, in my book, I talk about how I had, after a company-wide party, we brought the whole company together. And this is the last time we brought the entire company together. It was 750 people, and they were from around the world. And we had Colin Powell, Secretary of State Colin Powell, speak. And then I needed to follow him. And no one wants to follow Colin Powell. I was very nervous, 750 people following Colin Powell. And I just, was nervous the way I often am in those situations. And, I think it's just a case of taking whatever nerves you have, anxieties, and converting, turning them into adrenaline and converting them to positive energy, and just, getting excited and doing it. And then it gets better each time. And I remember I actually have, I have two quotes in my book, one from Stevie Nicks and one from Beyonce. And both of their thoughts are, if you're not a little nervous, if you don't feel a bit of, anxiety, nervous energy, then you're not going to deliver a great performance. So, I like to believe that too. But I think it's about just going in there with confidence despite whatever anxiety you have.
Yeah, I'm totally aligned with you on that. One of the leadership tools, and in fact, that I work with women on is modulate confidence. It's highly overrated, because if you wait until you're 100% confident to do anything, you'll never get anything done. Never, ever.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
And also there's another aspect to it, I think, which is that if you are overconfident, if you think you already know everything, or you already have all that you need, you lose the humility that you need to have to keep learning and to be open to new ideas. So I'm 100% in agreement with what you just said. And also you grow those muscles by using them. You don't grow the confidence muscles by thinking about it. You only grow those muscles by actually getting in the fray and using them. So you're a great role model for that. So
no, I love what you just said. I agree with everything you just said. Yes, if you practice, if you exercise them, you use them, and it's true. I mean, I think it's good if you don't walk in as though you're the smartest person in the room, because clearly, I mean, I never felt that I was, and I had so much to learn, and I think that's helpful too. So absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
I'm just going to encourage some more questions. Lois, I want to thank you again for asking that very important question. You can see that really set us off in a good conversation. So please feel free to put any questions in the chat, or if you want to just raise your hand, that's okay too. And meanwhile, I'm going to ask you, Liz, if you have, say, 3 most important characteristics that you think are the characteristics of somebody who will be successful. What are the characteristics that you think people need to employ to become successful in doing whatever they are dreaming up?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I always try to narrow it down to a certain number, but yes, whether it's 3 but what the number is. But I think, being a hard worker and being, I don't know if this is 1 or 2, but relentless, not quitting, grit, taking it to the end, I think that is so, so important, because I think that's really what differentiates, whether people make it. I think Warren Buffett has this great quote about the difference between the people who are really successful and the people who aren't is discipline. And it's said in a better way than I just said it, but it's all about hard work and goals with deadlines and sticking to it. So I think that whole hard work, discipline, not never quitting concept is so, so important. I think another one is curiosity, always wanting to learn more, because that's when you figure a lot of things out. You get a lot of your ideas, you learn more, you do better with people when you're truly interested in them and what they're doing. So I think that is super important for, any employee, any leader, any person. And I guess, the last is maybe proactivity, just taking initiative, just, innovating. I apologize. I'm giving you more than 3 because I
That's
always
okay.
have trouble
No,
narrowing it down.
as
I do.
many as you want.
Yeah, but so I will stop. But those are a number that I think are so, valuable and important.
What was the importance of the networks that you had? You said many times that you were one of the lucky ones, and that and I don't know whether part of that was knowing people who could help you along the way. I mean, how did the like the relationships that you had built, the people that the way you handled making relationships and alliances, how did that factor into your success?
Yeah, and by the way, I see on here Carlos Busayo. I don't know, Carlos, if you're on here, but he was someone I knew way back in the day from NYU. So, and he was very helpful to me. So I just point that out because
Excellent.
Carlos, are you there? I don't know.
There.
Yes, but so wonderful to see your name here. But the answer is overall, didn't I didn't know a lot of people. I didn't have connections. I really, really didn't. I was young, just out of school, out of business school, 26 years old, had really no connections. I, but I did focus on networking to the extent I could. I mean, but it was mostly, there wasn't so much opportunity. I was actually looking for things like women's groups, events. I remember looking at Cranes back in the day. Where is there a place I can go and meet people? And there just weren't in the early 90s. There was nothing. And now for women, oh my God. I mean, there are organizations like Take the Lead that are doing amazing work. And there are, so many for women, so many women's groups and so many networking groups. So I think it's wonderful, to take advantage of those. I mean, there wasn't too much of that back then. The one thing I did join back in the day was in the mid 90s, I joined YEO, Young Entrepreneurs Organization, which is now called EO. And then after that, I joined YPO. But now, again, there's so many more organizations, there's so many more events, and there's so many more women's events and organizations. So it's wonderful.
So very true. And Sharon Jackson has a question. What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self? What would you do differently other than the right contacts if you were starting over today? So I guess those are 2 questions. Yeah. What would you tell your younger self, and what would you do differently?
Okay. Well, as far as my younger self, and this is something I battle with all the time still, right? Because sometimes we don't learn from our mistakes. We become more ourselves as we get older, but not to be a perfectionist, not to worry about everything being right, or I'll never take action, right? And I was that way back then, and I still, have to say, just go with it, take it. If it doesn't work out, on to the next thing. So, perfectionism is the enemy of progress. And I think I would remind myself of that. But the other thing I would specifically do my best to do differently is I didn't have the company set up right. And I mentioned this when I talked about the final 4 or 5 to 6 years of my, when I was with my company. We had no money when we started. I mean, really, it was working with my savings account and a little bit of a credit card advance. So as a result, we did not hire a lawyer, we did not hire an accountant, and we did not spend the money on a shareholders agreement. And everybody should have a shareholders agreement. Basically to define roles, responsibilities, how decisions are made, dispute resolution, what happens in the event of death, disability, divorce, marriage, and a buy-sell provision in the event that someone wants to leave. I didn't have that. And at the same time, I was 50-50 owners with my partner with no tiebreaker. So I would say, you definitely need a shareholders agreement. It's critical to spend whatever money you have on that. Even, and a lot of people don't do it because there's nothing to fight for in the beginning, nothing to fight about. And you're loving your partner at the beginning and you don't see all the differences. But then the other piece of it is, if you do have a partner or partners, make sure you're the decision maker. Or if somehow that's not possible, make sure you have a decision-making process that you feel good about. Because those are the things I did wrong that really caused a lot of problems, certainly over the years, and are very completely at the end. Yeah. So anyway, that's what I would do differently, and recommend others don't make the same mistake I did. And then, the last thing, this is getting into really the nitty-gritty of it, but when you do have that shareholders agreement, you should have a non-compete with your partner, because otherwise you might have trouble getting the result if neither of you has signed a non-compete. Unless you imagine wanting to sell and start a new company, which, assuming you don't want that, you want that non-compete in there. Because you can then get more money for your company ultimately. So that's the reasoning behind it.
Lots and lots and lots of great advice there. There's one more, I think, kind of important question here that Susan Heaney has asked, and I'm going to probably close with that unless anybody else has a burning question they must ask, so that we can stay within our time frame that we have promised you. I really appreciate that really everybody who signed in is still here, and we will be sending the link to all of you and to all of the other people, because there were a lot of other people who registered. So we will be sending the link to you and to all the other people who registered, so that everybody can have the benefit of, if you want to check, re-listen to something or rewatch something, you'll be able to do that, because there have been so many incredibly valuable tips and tools that have been shared here today. Liz, thank you so very much. So before I give Susan's question to you, Liz, I'm just going to, I have to just tell people what our gift is that we want to give everyone today, which is, if you do sign up today using the code that you can see in the chat, and Christina, if you'll just put it in one more time, in addition to getting a 20% discount on the ticket price, and you'll get a book if you're one of the first 25, you will get a copy of Liz's book if you are one of the first 250 people who signs up, and we're getting close to that number now, so hurry on up and be one of them. But the third thing that we want to give you, because we so appreciate your coming and being part of this, is a ticket that you can share with someone else. So essentially, you'll be able to get a ticket to the event, whether it's the in-person version in Los Angeles or the virtual version that everyone can have access to from anywhere in the world. You'll get a free ticket that you can use for that to share with someone else in your life, or someone who you think would benefit from it. And we'd love to invite you to be at the conference. We'd love to invite you to invite someone else to be there, so that we can all continue this path toward true equity, true equality, and a better world, I think, for everyone, when we have more equality and more equity in this world for both genders. Or for all genders. So, all right, this question from Susan is, are we best served to continue to create and attend organizations and events that are just for women, or should we continue to drive gender integration and leadership within those traditionally led by men? Big question. What do you think, Liz?
So I'm thinking about that question, because I was thinking about the first part of it. Yeah, should we attend? Okay, I mean, I'll tell you what my initial thought is. And by the way, I appreciate, as I said, Carlos is here and Gerald. I don't know if we have other men here. Nice to see you. Certainly, I so appreciate, yes, the men who are here. If there are any others, thank you. But that's a great question, because when I sold my company, when I started my foundation 5 years ago, I thought about that, and I had this idea of starting something. And back then we talked more about women and men. Now we talk about all genders. But I had this idea of calling my organization something like the 50-50 Project, but it would be the every one project, because I do feel, and I think we all feel, it's so important to get men involved in this cause too. And there's so many wonderful men out there who care and who want to be a part of lifting women, and and marginalized populations, and people from all different races, religions, backgrounds. So I do think we need to get men involved and be involved with men in this cause, absolutely. And that has been my thought, and that's why when I wrote my book too, I made a big effort to not make it a book by women or by a woman for only women. I mean, so absolutely, I really think it's very important to get these great men involved, and there are a lot of them out there. There's so many, and I'm meeting more of them all the time. So that's how I feel.
It's a very it's a very good question, and thank you for it, Susan.
Yeah.
Because what happens in a social movement is, as you begin to have success, you have a different set of issues, and it becomes a little more complex. And so I think we are in one of those moments where we do have this opportunity, and there are so many more men now who want to be part of it. It's why we give a leading man award at our conference every year. And I am just a point of personal privilege here. My husband, who passed away last year, was my most ardent supporter and always considered himself an ardent feminist. And so we named the award for him starting last year.
Oh.
And so it's especially special for me. And this year it will be given by last year's leading man, whose name is Veda Manager. And he has been doing amazing work to get more women on corporate boards. I mean, he has his own global consulting company, and he's worked for big companies like Nike and so forth. But he definitely has always been very, very focused on getting more women into leadership positions, and has been a wonderful mentor of mine over the years. And the award will be given this year by Veda to this year's leading man, whose name is Darnell Moore, who has been involved in gender and racial and LGBTQ justice for many years. And he's now VP of inclusion strategy for Netflix. So I love seeing people who have these values getting into positions like that, so that they can really impact the culture of large companies, and as well as fighting for the other organizations that we're all so involved with. So that's my wrap on that particular question. And it will be a little messy, it'll be a little messy. I think it doesn't mean that we don't have organizations that are for women, because until we are at that 50-50 point, we're still going to need to give women some additional help, some training, some coaching, some role model programs, and some thought leadership help. But we're on the road. I think we're on the right road. So Liz, let me give you the last word. And if anybody has other comments that you want to put into the chat, please do. An appreciation for Liz for being here. Claps for Liz for being here. If you know how to use, I don't know how to use all those little emojis.
No.
but I love for you, to put, what was your biggest takeaway from what Liz had to say? If you just put it in the chat, and we'll save the chat and we'll share it with everybody afterward. And Liz, what would you? Oh, great! You've got hearts. You've got claps. This is great. What final words would you like to share in terms of the incredible work that you're doing, the book that you're just about to have on? It's not out yet, right? It will be out in September.
That's right. The official publication date is September 26th. And yeah, I mean, I just, I so appreciate all of you being here today. So appreciate you all, because I know you're busy. It's a busy day. Every day is busy, and there's so much content out there. So you are wonderful to be here. And as far as my takeaway, I just think, keep pursuing your dreams, no matter what they are. I feel it's never too late. And I I am so inspired by the wonderful people like you all who I'm meeting here today with your wonderful questions and you're getting involved. And I looked at what your dreams were, and I am just so inspired by them. And I know we have a lot of like-minded people here who want to make the world a better place. And sure, to some degree it's through business, but business is a vehicle to then get to create these changes for all. And I just, would say keep dreaming big and winning. And I just thank you all for being a part of making that happen. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you all so much. Thanks to everyone for being here. Really appreciate it. Hope I'll see some of you in Los Angeles, or at least in the virtual concert and conference. And let's keep talking. Let's keep talking. These are important conversations. So Liz, thank you so much. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for what you do. Thanks to everybody for being here.
Thanks so much to you too, Gloria. And thanks so much, everybody. So appreciate you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.